Hey, I'm Daniel Berger, and this is Adventures of a Real Estate Broker. Welcome to the podcast where Metro New York real estate meets great stories and a douse of humor. Forget the dry sales talk. Here we dive into the fun and unexpected moments of real estate. Join me each week as we explore Westchester, Long Island, the Bronx, and more. You'll hear about the people, the places, and the crazy situations that make this industry so interesting. Thanks to our sponsor, Remax Prestige Properties, we're ready to share the lighter side of real estate. Whether you're a pro, a buyer, or just curious, we've got something for everyone. Ready for today's adventure? Let's get into it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Adventures of a Real Estate Broker with Daniel Berger. Today, I'm excited to have someone that's going to help many of our businesses, including my own, Joe DiChiara, who is a CPA. He's with over 40 years experience. He's also the founder of CPAi Business Builders and also Bedrock Business Builders. And it's always good to have your business with the backbone of starting with a CPA who's ensuring that you're structurally sound before you even start with your idea and before you start doing your business. So with that, Joe, thank you so much for being on the show.
You're welcome. I want to apologize for my lighting just went, but that's how technology works. It's not if it's gonna fail you, it's when,
Well,
right?
isn't also when technology fails, what do you do to plan B? Plan B is always important to know what you're going to do in certain situations.
Yeah, you ride with it. And I gotta share this with you. One of my best friends, one of my mentors, toured with large rock band Guns N' Roses and Air Supply for a long time. I learned a lot. Believe it or not, those bands are well-oiled machines and stuff always goes wrong. And he had a lot of live events where stuff goes wrong. And business is like that. And that's the truth. Stuff goes wrong. And that's why I do what I do.
So that's true. Stuff does go wrong all the time. And so it seems like a lot of what you do is to set up structures. It's more for brokerages, right, than it is for individual agents.
No, that's not true. Actually, individual agents are our ideal client. Actually, self-employed professionals, but we got a number of real estate agents, and I love dealing with real estate agents.
I would say that you probably love dealing with them because they really haven't thought about the structure, right? They think of, oh, I'm going to be a real estate agent. The one issue with our industry is the barriers to entry are so low, right? You don't need to have any educational background except for taking like a 75-hour or 100-hour class, passing the test, and then sending money to your state. And then you're issued a license, and there you go. And that's much lower than in many other industries, right? Obviously, to be a professional sports person, you have to have practiced your trade for many years generally before you're going to be a professional. But in ours, people are looking for us to be a professional real estate, either agent or broker. And I got my license and I'm ready to go. But so that's it. And so what I've seen with a lot of agents and even brokers that they're not necessarily set themselves up properly from the start, a financial standpoint. There are pros and cons to being an independent contractor or a lone member, a sole member of an LLC. You should at least set yourself up to properly benefit because that's the whole point of it is there are a lot of negatives, but there are benefits. What's your advice and how would you tell people an agent to set up if they're going to become an agent as well as what I should do as a broker? And I know that you're in New York, I'm in New York. So if you want, you can be more specific to New York in the sense that's where you practice.
Can I start with an overview and you know
Absolutely.
exactly where I'm coming from? I'm an entrepreneur, first and foremost. I just happen to have a CPA license. And that's a whole nother story. My father tricked me into becoming a CPA when I was 17. I didn't know that meant I was going to be an accountant, but what I knew was CPAs ran businesses and helped businesses. Business owners went to them for advice. And for a long time, I resented my father because I didn't like being an accountant. Fast forward to right before COVID, I wanted to restructure my business because I was bored, to be honest with you. So I started doing a deep dive into exactly what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, right? And I came across a statistic that floored me. And it's this. At the time, there were 30 million businesses in the United States. That's a lot of businesses, right?
Yes.
Almost 90% of them were classified as sole proprietorships for tax purposes. Now, this made absolutely no sense to me because that's the worst way to do business. And the truth is, I was in like the CPA bubble because where I come from, working with CPA firms, we automatically incorporated sole proprietors and made them S Corps because it just made all the sense in the world. Sole proprietors, and let me preface this because there's a big misconception. LLCs, unless you do a tax election, LLCs are taxed as a sole proprietorship. So that changed my world because I said, that's a problem that I can solve. And there's a big market. Okay. So imagine you wake up one day and you say, oh my God, there's 27 million people that want to buy a house. And I know exactly how to sell them a house, right? It's simple, but not that easy because the truth is, most people aren't aware of the problem until they start filing their taxes. And what happens, somebody like you become successful, all of a sudden you're making money. Let's say you're making 200K a year, and you're like, why am I paying 80,000 a year in taxes? The reason is because 15% goes right to Social Security taxes. You don't have a choice. Your net profit is taxed 15%. That's not income tax. Then you add the federal, and you're in New York, federal and state income taxes, and you're up to over 40%. So, what can you do for that? The answer is simple. You become an S Corp. Okay. Now, my gut tells me that this is not going to last for too much longer. Okay. Now, the benefit is let me go back to the real problem. The real problem is you're overtaxed. You don't have that many options from a tax standpoint, not even close to as many as an S Corp has or a C Corp. Okay. So you're overtaxed. Number two, sole proprietors get audited more than anyone else. Because here's the other fact. Most of them are sole proprietors because they don't have the right guidance, because accountants are expensive. And most sole proprietors, most brand new entrepreneurs say, I'll hire an accountant when I start making money. So it's what came first, the chicken or the egg? Do they hire the accountant first and do things correctly, get the right guidance, or do they wait? Most people tend to wait. And they believe that the solution is if I just sell more, if I just get more clients, everything will be okay. And then the truth is, because I have been doing this over 40 years, the truth is they get a wake up call. And one day they wake up and say, you know what? I got to do something about this tax situation. And that's it in a
What
nutshell.
what are the differences, though, the specific differences between this sole proprietorship LLC and an S corp from a deduction standpoint?
Like I said, an LLC without the proper elections, because you can elect as an LLC. Number one, you elect to be taxed as as a corporation, and then you elect to be taxed as an S corp. 99% of the time, that's the best way to do business. Okay. So as an S corp, you're in control. Your net profit is not subject to self-employment tax. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to escape Social Security taxes altogether, because if you have a profit, you have to pay yourself what they call a reasonable salary. But reasonable is open to interpretation. Now, a lot of people, there's accountants that say, oh, if you make 200 grand, you should take 190,000 as a salary. That's not realistic. What I do is I calculate reasonable based on what my client needs in living expenses. That's reasonable, because a reasonable businessman wouldn't take money out of his business unless it's for retirement and investment. Let's say they wanted to invest in real estate, then you take it as a salary.
So I'm a little
Okay.
different because I actually don't take it as a salary. So mine is really more as a individual LLC, or sole proprietor. I do what my expenses are, my income, my expenses, and then there's a number that comes out, and it's way too confusing for me to know exactly what it is because of other things. But I don't specifically take it. At the end of the year, obviously the taxes are due, and it flows through my personal statement. But so I'm in a little bit of a different situation, but it's also important. A lot of people, a lot of agents that I know and brokers, I don't think even formulate LLCs, and you have to do it in a way that the LLC, besides protecting you from a tax perspective, it's also protecting your personal assets in case there's a
Yes.
loss.
So the LLC, so here's the thing, there's no tax benefits to an LLC, but it does protect you from creditors. Okay. My experience, very few self-employed people get sued. Okay. If a self-employed person goes for a bank loan or a credit card, more than likely the credit card is going to be in their name, or the bank is going to make them sign personally. So you actually get no benefit from being an LLC, zero benefit most of the time. Now, an LLC is perfect for passive activities like rental real estate, because those activities aren't subject to self-employment tax. They don't get audited as much. Okay. And also, you go to a bank as a sole proprietorship, you don't get any respect. They're not looking at your business, they're looking at your personal credit score. Okay. You can't build a business credit as a sole proprietor. You can as a corporation, and there's ways to do it. It takes a while, but that's a whole nother situation.
I guess if you're looking, yeah,
Let me back up a sec. First of all, your taxes aren't due once a year, they're due quarterly. That's another thing people don't realize. You don't pay, when you do your taxes. The IRS wants it quarterly. They're not giving you an interest-free loan. And a lot of people don't realize that when they file their taxes, there's a penalty included. Their accountant may not tell them, or if, and this is another thing, most self-employed people do the returns themselves. That's another thing that's shocking. So they're doing it themselves on something like TurboTax, or there's a lot of programs out there, and they put in the amount, and they don't realize that there's a calculation for interest and penalties. If they don't calculate it, they're going to get a notice from the IRS about 3 months after they file the return. And they're going to say, why do I owe money? But that's the truth. Now,
right.
also, as a sole proprietor, you whether you take money out of the business or not, you're getting taxed on it. Okay. As an S Corp, you can leave the money in there. You're still going to get taxed on it because they're both what they call flow-through entities. They don't pay any income tax at the business level, but it flows through to you on your personal return. Okay. So what I do with my practice, I monitor how much my clients are going to owe in taxes because I know what their profit is all the way up until October, November. We start taking a snapshot of how much they've made. And then if they owe money, we're going to give them a bonus as a salary. And then we pay their taxes through their salary. Now, if you need more money to live on or whatever, you could take a distribution out of that. It doesn't have, but it's not subject to self-employment tax. Does that
So
make sense?
yeah, it does. And for me, what I do, what's a lot of people need to do is I don't think enough real estate people fund their retirement properly. I think that's much more of when you work for a company and there's matching where they do that. But I don't see that people pay themselves in their retirement. So that's something that I've set up for myself because that also then lowers, right? As a sole proprietorship, I can put my own distributions in, and then I also can pay profit share. So the profit share, I'm the only member of my LLC, so I'm able to declare profits, and technically, I get all of that can go into my retirement account. So that's something that I feel that
Right.
people are doing.
So as a business owner, that's something that you have as an advantage over somebody that works at a company. Okay, you can put more money away in a retirement. Okay, the whole idea of the IRA when you're working for a company. See, when I started, IRAs just started. And the idea was we're going to put money in the IRA when we're in a high tax bracket, and we're going to take it out when we retire, and we'll be in a lower tax bracket. The truth is, 30 years later, because Social Security wasn't taxable back then, and now it is. So I have clients that if they take money out of the IRA that they put in 30 years ago, they're getting killed in taxes. So that's another thing as a whether you're a sole proprietor or an S corp, you could put a lot more away. I have clients where they're putting up to 25% of their salary into a SEP IRA. Okay, so that's a huge benefit. So
Yeah.
business owners and even business owners that are doing a side gig, let's say, because when I started, there were no side gigs, right? They didn't have like part-time businesses. Now a lot of people can have part-time businesses and you can do the same stuff. You can do I don't care if you have an Amazon store, an eBay shop, you could set up an S Corp and start reaping the benefits. And another benefit, Daniel, that people don't realize, once you become a business, you could start taking personal assets like your computer, like your car, like your home office in the home. Those become business expenses and they overlook them all the time. And that's huge.
I think absolutely. If you're going to have a business plan for running your real estate business, you should also have a part of that is the bedrock and the foundation of your business, right? Are you and making sure that everything is working in a well-oiled machine. What advice do you give to people as they're if you're going to go look at a broker, what are some of the action steps that you look at it to ensure that they're properly operating as a smaller brokerage?
What do you mean as an accountant,
If
as
you're
in
going to come
business
in and look
advisor?
at someone's business, what are the things that you're going to make sure that they are they structured properly? Are you going to ask questions about what insurances you have?
Yeah,
You know, mhm.
we go through a whole process. It starts off, I'll meet with every client. And by the way, we have international practice. We have foreign clients that set up US businesses, believe it or not. And we have US clients all over the country because I've been doing accounting remotely since you were able to. I've been doing it remotely for over 20 years. Okay. The process is I ask them questions. How are you doing business now? Are you commingling? Are you using a business account? So most people, believe it or not, I'd say 80% of the business owners come to me as LLCs because they knew enough to say, I need to be, if I want to be a real business, I need to have a business entity. And then I educate them. We do a lot of educating. Okay, we teach our clients this is what you can deduct, this is how you deduct it, this is how you protect yourself by keeping the right books and records. Okay, and then we monitor their finances. And that's how we stay on top of it. And what I like to do, I like to do a deep dive into how they're actually operating their business, the finances. So taxes are, I look at it as that's a result of what you've done. Okay. Now the question is, what are you going to do moving forward? Are you planning for retirement? Do you want to have a business that you can sell? Okay. Believe it or not, a real estate, so you are a real estate agent, right? You could structure your business so you could actually hand it off to somebody.
So give me a little bit of because that's one thing is that of course all the time I get companies that are like, oh, we want to merge or we they always say that. I'm a little different because I built my business so that I didn't have to listen to other brokers as opposed to, and so me being the owner is really the reason why I'm a broker. And I enjoy personally mentoring and training people. So I do love that aspect of it, but that's not why I did it. I did it for me so that I can follow what the rules and regulations are, and because that's what the government has set up, not because that's the way that a firm has always done it or wants to do it. Sometimes scale for the sake of scaling isn't always a thing, right? So
Oh, yeah.
I have no employees, right? I have a couple of people that are independent contractors that maybe support my social media, that maybe support my financial accounting, like just summarizing stuff. But there's because once you have one employee, and it gets to be more of a burden, right? Because many more rules and regulations. So I have zero.
Oh, yeah.
So
No, you're right on. I agree with what you're doing. Employees are expensive. And believe it or not, a very low percentage of companies ever even get to that one employee or two employee level. I could throw statistics at you, it doesn't matter, but let's just say 97% of, and now it's up to 33 million. When I started this, it was 30 million. So the amount of businesses are growing exponentially and it's not going to stop. Okay. 97% of them have 5 employees or less. But still, the bulk of them are, and even if they're incorporated, they're still solopreneurs. Okay. But yeah, employees are expensive. And you got to have workers' comp, disability. And in New York, that stuff is expensive.
right.
Forget about if you have an employee that's driving a car. You know what? I'll give you the best example, and this is great. A roofer, the workers' comp insurance for a roof company is 50%. Think about that.
50% of what?
Their wages. So if you're paying a guy
Wow.
100K a year, it's 50,000 just in workers' comp. And then you got to pay payroll taxes and yeah, and compliance. Payroll is like an octopus. I don't, what I try to do is coach my business on the big picture. And the big picture is listen, there's a lot of ways to make money nowadays besides just selling. So, for instance, a big thing that I'm doing now are courses and coaching. So, as a real estate agent, and you mentioned it, you like mentoring people. What if you could make that part of your business? You could mentor people. you've been doing real estate for well over 20 years, right?
I'm actually, I think I'm completed eight. I'm in my ninth. It's just because I'm old and I have gray hair and I know a little bit of what I'm doing. So it acts like that. But that actually, me not doing it for 20 years is probably why I enjoy it so much now. And because I feel like I'm still a newbie. I act like a newbie, even though I have 500 transactions under my belt and
Wow.
I guess my point is I don't want to scale for the sake of scaling. And it's probably harder for me to create a business that I could sell it because I'm too much of the sales at the current time. And just because you sell a business doesn't mean that the other agents are going to want to stay. And so in the end of the day, I don't know like that. I think everything it has to be about what your goals are, right? So my goals are not to be bigger. My goals are not to necessarily sell something, but it's to have a structure now that allows me to do what I do, and also obviously the mentoring of other agents. I actually don't make any recruiting calls. If people contact me and then it's a right fit, then we can do it. But nimble, small and nimble is to me more of what I want out of it, right? So it's not, so everyone's different. And so certainly somebody can be like, I want to create something that I can sell to somebody else. And that's great. And you probably go about things a little differently than if you're just really creating a structure that allows you to no one get in your way and then you're able to sell and coach people. So it's a little, I guess it all depends on what you want out of it, right?
No, it always starts with you. And that's what I teach people. And I'm not even suggesting scaling. Okay. Scaling is a whole nother ball game. Okay. It's not easy to scale. Okay. For most of my career, it was just me and my mother. It was small, manageable. I had a really good business, eh, but I didn't have a lot of clients and I didn't have any employees. But I was free. Okay. I was free to travel. I didn't always do my accounting practice was never full time. Okay. When I'm talking about selling your business, it's not about being big, it's not about scaling. It's all about having something that you can hand off. And what that means is documenting your processes. How do you get clients? How do you do the sales call? And everybody's different. Everybody's different. What I'm trying to accomplish is to just plant a seed in people's minds, saying, you know what? I never even thought about that. And that's what keeps it fresh for me. I shared that I was really bored about 7 years ago, and I was like, what else can I do with my business that I really want to make an impact? And this is it. I started writing books about it. I started doing this. Actually, I'm just starting up again with the podcast. I had been doing it for a while, and some reason I got off track. But this is the message that I want to spread. Business doesn't have to be a struggle. It sounds like you got it down. You're one of the lucky ones. Okay.
I guess when you're older and then you come into the business where it's not about it's really about so my whole me is about satisfying clients and then the effect of and then they'll tell someone and they'll tell someone
Oh,
and building that up. So it's I did the podcast. I'm over a year now into doing podcasts, weekly podcasts, and it's just really to get to meet interesting people like yourself, have conversations. Do I have a fan base of 20,000? Absolutely not. But the whole thing with the internet is it's there. And somebody who wants to even see what I'm about, right? They can see what I'm about before they hire me or decide that they want to do business with me. They can see what's going on with that. I also just wrote a book, as you said, about the adventures of a real estate broker. Like I
I
go with the
love it.
branding there. And that's like really just a book about stories along the way, interesting stories of being a real estate agent and a real estate broker. Someone's, oh, you should call it confessions of. I'm like, well, it's not confessions. I'm not like telling things that I'm not supposed to. It's about adventures, right? So there's always interesting stories, and I think a lot of it is Again, people can see when they go through social media, oh, I wrote a book. And so writing a book, the hardest part is actually the dedication to I did it with an author. It was actually my son's girlfriend. She was a senior in college and wanted to be a writer and a publisher. So I'm like, okay, let's do it together. And I'm like, and we're not doing a ghostwriter, because if you can't put your name on the book, then I don't want you to write my book. And I
Nice.
also wanted to help her, right? Because she was a senior in college, and I want you to have a book that you can say that you wrote. And so it was through her senior year, writing the different chapters and getting it done, and then editing the book, and then putting it, and it's self-published on Amazon. It's not necessary. Yes, I think there's stories, and it's interesting because as people are reading it and they're telling me how much they liked it, it's more, I was able to do it, right? So if I'll stick with it to sell your house or to help you buy a house, because I stuck with doing my book. And in the end of the day, you now have something that's cool. And I feel that I know a lot of the work that you do and a lot of your analysis for your clients is AI, right? AI is changing the world. And I feel that people are going to basically ask Siri or go into Chat GPT and say, who are the best 5 agents that I should use to sell my house in X town? And I guess it will go through the internet and go through all the different things and try to come up and maybe look at sales and look at whatever. And so I, my view, and not knowing that much, but knowing a little, is that the more data points that you can have out there that differentiates yourself from just the average person can't hurt. That's my feeling.
So let me just say, I believe that teaching is one of the greatest contributions that we could make to the world. If it wasn't for teachers, where would we be? And I did check out your podcast, and you're providing an amazing service. Let me just say, it takes time. It takes time. But if you're consistent, you just keep putting out the content that you've been putting out there, because it's all what I saw were real estate people talking about how to become successful. So you mentioned that there's a low entry point. It's easy to become a real estate agent. It's not easy to become successful. The successful people are learners, right? They're lifelong learners. So a smart person would go on your podcast and say, you know what? I need to learn what other successful real estate agents are doing. So God bless you. Kudos for that. But let me mention about AI. Okay. I don't teach AI. What I do is what I learned through my experience. I started in business before there were desktop computers. Okay. And once we started buying desktop computers, the CPA firms I was working for, it was like a mystery. It was like, remember 2001 with the apes, or like the wall comes up? That's what computers were like. We were like, oh my God, this is cool, but what are we going to do with it? But the smart ones learned. They learned how to use it as a tool. And I remember people saying, oh my God, the computer's going to replace us. No, it didn't replace us. And then when a program called QuickBooks came out, accountants wanted to make believe it didn't exist, because they said, oh my God, QuickBooks is going to replace us. Because Intuit sold people on, oh, you could save money by doing your own bookkeeping. That was the stupidest idea I've ever heard, but people bought into it. Those guys were genius marketers. Okay. But what I learned was, and I made a lot of money off of teaching people how to use QuickBooks. And then I realized, I said, you know what? A guy that owns a restaurant shouldn't be doing QuickBooks. That's not, he should be cooking. He should be running his restaurant. An auto mechanic, he shouldn't have his wife doing his books. He needs a professional. But what I looked at QuickBooks as was a tool to help me do my job better, a tool to help me do it more efficiently, and actually lower my prices because now it cost me less time. I took my mother, she was 65 years old with no experience. I taught her how to do bookkeeping with QuickBooks, and it helped me, it helped my clients, and that's the way I looked at it. When I saw AI come in, I said, this is a repeat of QuickBooks. AI isn't going to replace us. Okay. For what you do, forget about replacing real estate agents, but replacing accountants. People don't want to talk to a computer, they want to talk to a person. But
I agree. The AI, there would, if they could already say where a buyer would basically email or through a bot talk to the listing agent or the owner, because why would they need a listing agent? And you're going to come to the house, you're going to walk through their house, and we're going to give you the code, or we're going to open the door when you get there. All of that would have been done already if it could be, but there is a secret sauce in what we do, right? I don't really sell houses. I don't sell. I provide information. If I'm the listing agent, I'm
right,
providing information about the house, and then I work through a negotiation to make sure that two sides come to an agreement on buying and selling. If I'm representing a buyer, I'm walking through the house looking, are there things that we need to worry about? And but I don't tell them that it's the house for them or whatever. Clearly, and then you might give advice on what pricing to come in and how to negotiate. So the negotiation is it that's inside you, right? So you can't really that's
right.
when someone's picking who they want as a buyer's agent. We're all different, right? We're different people. We have different ideas, different motivations, right? In my book, I talk about one of my clients I showed 205 houses to over 13 months. Like
Oh my God.
it's my record. It's probably most people's record. And people are like, why wouldn't you fire them? I'm like, fire them. Why would I fire someone that's actively trying to find a house but hasn't found the house that's good for them? And in the end of the day, it was like they paid $1.2 million. I ended up making about $100 a showing. How much more should I make? Sometimes you get lucky and you show one house or zero houses because you FaceTime it and they're buying a house. So you never look at it from the money perspective. You look at how do you help people? And if you build a business on how do you help people, then sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. And with this, but
Okay.
you'll never lose because you're always helping people. And those people have friends and family, and then are going to want to sell their house, buy something, they're going to want to buy an investment property. So in my small 9 years of doing this, last year I did, I think 65 transactions, 42 million in sales. It's only about trying to help people, and then people calling you and saying help me with this or help me with that because they see that what your motivation is, and that's just it's blocking and tackling, and it's hard work every day, and it's responding to people, and it's trying to leverage professionals. Like I only try to stay in my lane, but when we need other people, I go to people that are professionals so that they can so that all lanes are covered.
Yeah. So can I turn the table here a second?
Yes,
I'd like to ask you a question. Isn't buying a house a very personal transaction and you're
a
not going to
hundred
do,
percent.
yeah. And selling a house, my aunt just bought a house and they should have closed like in August, but the seller kept delaying and delaying. And then I finally asked her the other day, I'm like, why do they keep delaying? And she said, because the mother has been in the house for a long time and she just doesn't want to let it go. Think about it. For the seller, it's like they have all the memories, they raise their kids. How do you deal with that? Because just like with, for me, people with money, they get very emotional. That's got to be a huge part of what you're doing.
It's so when I said I don't sell, but I do. I am a psychologist and psychiatrist,
Right.
I think, at one point, because you are dealing with people's human emotions. So in the case like that, there are laws about like you when you do need to leave, and then you have to get the lawyers involved. But it depends on how they did it. Maybe there it was flexible, but I've had one where I sold. It was her mother's house, and after basically the daughter needed time to say goodbye to her mother was passed, but to say goodbye to her mother's things. And that was what was left of her mother. So she really went into the bedroom. She went into her mother's bed and she basically needed time to cry, right? That's just how she was able to finalize that, that apartment, which she took so long to even put on the market. Nobody was living there. They were paying a lot of money for it, but that was her last connection to her mother. So it is not my place I'm there to support and help her. And certainly at that last moment, give her time. And that's what she needed for closure. And so that was an example of me just being there for the person. And not, you don't judge, and everyone does things differently. That was her last moment where she felt she had the connection on earth to her mother, even though her mother wasn't there, her mother's things were. And you just give her the time and you just try to have conversations. And sometimes if I'm on the other end of the example of them not moving out, you try to be respectful, but on the other hand, your buyer might need to get into the school. They need to buy it and renovate it. Maybe they have a mother that needs to go in and they're sick. And so there's always two sides. But generally you're able to get there. I think the more that you're open-minded and trying to understand that people have feelings and all that, and then work through it. Not everyone's has great reasons for stuff. Some could be horrible reasons. And then there are rules and laws. And my lane is not the legal lane, but then I bring in the legal people to help make sure that my clients their rights are being protected. So that's why it's not AI. It's never going to go to a computer or AI because it doesn't go like that. And that's the secret sauce of working with a person, right? Where you and I'm clearly not perfect. Nobody is perfect, but my goal is always to be the best Danny Berger that I can be. There are other people that are bigger than me, whatever. I can only be the best me. And if every day I work hard and try to satisfy my clients, and that's all I can do. And hopefully that's what my clients want. And my last thing that I'll say is that it's really about working for the review. So if you can do it where at the end of the transaction, they can write a good review, it's more about that than the check. And most times people are happy the way that we work. Sometimes people's expectations of the process might be a little different than what actually happens. And you try to work through that as best you can. But hundreds of deals, generally it's gone well. But it's also, how do you deal with adversity, right? Because not everything works out. And sometimes it's not even your fault. It's just things that are happening. And that's when you show your true colors, right? When things are negative, are you still trying to fight for people, even for people that think that you're not really? So those are the things that I guess separate average from above average or great. But Joe, I'm sure we could talk for hours about business and business development and taxes and all that. I guess there's three things in life, right? Death, taxes, and that the podcast needs to end. So with that, I'm going to thank you, Joe, for coming on. I appreciate it. And obviously there'll be links and everything. So if people want to see CPAi Business Builders and the Bedrock Business Builders, they'll be able to link in. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it. And for everyone, this is Daniel Berger with the Adventures of a Real Estate Broker. Until next week, thank you very much for listening. Thanks for joining me on the Adventures of a Real Estate Broker. I hope you enjoyed our time together as much as I did. If you laughed, learned something, or just had a good time, do yourself a favor and subscribe to the podcast. A big shout out to our sponsor, RE/MAX Prestige Properties, for making this all possible. Remember to leave a review if you enjoyed the show. It helps more people find us. Until next time, keep it real, keep it fun, and keep exploring the adventures in your neighborhood. I'm Daniel Berger, your New York realtor, and I'll see you in the next episode.